A couple of months ago, GameMaker introduced string templating, and it works like this. So if you have a variable, let's call it money, and if you want to print it out to the console, you can type, you have this much money, followed by an open curly brace, the number 0, and a closed curly brace. And if you pass a second argument to the show debug message function, for example, money, you could print out what that value is in the string directly in the console. Let me get rid of that game window. And, oh god, where is it? This line here. And you wouldn't have to do any annoying string concatenation or turning numbers into strings or anything like that. And generally it makes logging a lot easier than it used to be. Can I shrink this to make this all fit on screen at once? And if you wanted to show multiple values like this, you could, instead of... Well, basically, you can increment the number between the curly braces, and that will print out each additional parameter to the show debug message function in sequence. So I have this much money and this many bagels. That's a lot of bagels. Could go for that right now. And this also works for the string function itself. So the string function itself is a little bit more annoying. So you can insert values into a string using the string function and using the same notation. And that's pretty handy. It makes things like logging values to the console a lot easier. It makes things like translating your game a lot easier. It's the sort of modern feature that you might come to expect from a programming language in whatever the current year is. And when this first came out, a bunch of people asked if it would be possible to do things such as directly print out a variable inside the string like this. And I was not a fan of the idea at first, and I'll get into more of why that might be at the end of the video. But to make a long story short, you could not. If you tried to print out this value literally, you would see you have this much money, and this many bagels, which isn't really, what we're going for here. But starting with what month are we in now? April of 2023 GameMaker betas. GameMaker has expanded upon the string templating functionality a little bit, and now if you try to print out the string, you'll still get what you would have gotten before, as you saw. But if you insert a $sign before the string, you can see that the syntax highlighting changes a little bit. And if I were to run this now, I'm also gonna game end down there so that I don't have to actually see the game window. If I were to run this now, you have this much money and this many bagels, and the values money and bagels have been substituted for the correct values. And you don't need to, for example, insert the string templating arguments and add the parameters to the end, money, bagels, and in fact, if you try to do this, I think you'll just literally get the values 0 and 1. So don't do that. Yeah, you literally got the values 0 and 1. And now this will also work for any string. So previously you would have had to have used the show debug message or the string function if you wanted to get the fancy like string templating, string interpolation features to work. But this will now work for any string. If you wanted to take this into, for example, the draw event of an object, let me go and make myself an object. Let me throw my object in my room. And if I were to put this in the draw event of this object, let's draw text at position 32, 32, and that string. This will still work, and you don't have to use the string function to... right. And you don't have to use the string function to make it work. It'll just insert the values without you having to ask it. You know what? I think I'll just do the rest of this in the draw event. So that the values are just there on screen and so that I don't have to like go hunting for them in the console. So this is pretty much across the board an improvement over the old string interpolation features. Now, this will also work for expressions. So if I were to draw text at, let's say, 3264 on the line below it, let's say, what should I put on the screen? Today's date is, and then between the curly braces, I can say, date time string. date, current date time. Took me a minute to remember those. And this is going to print out today is Friday, April 14th at whatever, 12:25 and 30 seconds p.m. is what the current time is when I'm recording this. So this also works for expressions. If you wanted to do math, let's add another line. If you want to say, I believe the first thing that I saw this shown off with a little while ago was like basic math. 10 times 12 is, and we can show 10 times 12 on the screen. 120, great, GameMaker can do math. And you're probably starting to know that this will work with any old expression. And this kind of gets into why I really didn't want something like this added originally. And this gets down to the way that GameMaker has implemented this internally. So the new string templating features that you're seeing right now are basically shorthand for the string concat function, which is a function that will concatenate strings. I need another closed parentheses there. It's basically a function to do something like using the plus operator on a string, and I'm not going to get into it more than that. But the string templating is basically, as the computer science people like to call it, syntactic sugar for using the string concat function. And let's just say that I thought it was going to work a little bit differently. I thought it was going to instead work in that GameMaker would literally parse a string and execute any GML that it finds inside it. To make this work, which is not what's happening here, and if what I just said sounds vaguely familiar and instills a vague sense of horror within you, that's because that's basically how the execute string function used to work in GameMaker. And that introduced all kinds of horrors with... It would have been very slow because GameMaker would have basically had to interpret/compile the GML at runtime. It would have allowed you to mess up your game in very interesting ways if you use it wrong. Possibly worst of all, it would be a bit of a security breach if you allow your users to get access to it and use it to make your game do things that you didn't intend. But as it is, this is just syntactic shorthand for concatenating strings. And this does have some implications. This does have some implications for things that you will want to be aware of. Let's say var bagel string equals this. So if you save this value to a string, the string will contain you have this much money, 100, and this many bagels, 1,000. If you were to change the value of, let's say, money to 200 and bagels to, let's say, like 1,000,000 or something like that, and draw the bagel string, GameMaker will not use the updated values. We still think we have anyway, 100 money and 1,000 bagels, even though those values have changed by the time GameMaker is drawing the string. And again, that is because that the values are being inserted into the string here on line 4, and not at runtime when the string is drawn or printed to the console or anything like that. So be wary of that. There is one thing which I am curious about, which I have not tested on my own, and I'm going to do right now, so you're going to get to see the results on the fly as I find them myself. And that is that performance-wise, I have a hypothesis that this should also be quite a bit faster than the I would say the several-month-old string templating features. That's not 1,000,000, is it? That's 100,000. Because here, GameMaker's just concatenating a couple strings together, and it doesn't have to iterate over the string and interpret them in any way. So if I were to do something like var iterations equals, let's do 1,000,000 iterations. I feel like the syntax highlighting is getting a little confused here, and I don't know why. Anyway, I'm going to run the game. We are going to have to wait for that to run. The old string templating took... What did that say? Oh, interesting. So not only is the new string templating system not faster than the old one, it's actually like 75% slower. That's interesting. I wonder if I don't know, maybe internally concatenating strings is actually more expensive than just iterating over them, and I don't know. I do not have an explanation for that. No, you would think that even if it was doing this, it would still have to concatenate the results, but it would still have to do the added step of iterating over the string and searching for these symbols. Who knows? Maybe this string templating system is actually a good deal more complicated than I expect it has to be. I would have thought that it can at least do part of this at compile time and not have to, stitch as many things together at runtime, but maybe that's not the case. Maybe this is, a GameMaker beta that came out about 2.5 hours ago, so it's possible that there are still some things to work out. Maybe in a month when this hits the stable version of GameMaker, this actually will be faster. Feel free to run this test yourself. Maybe there's just some experimental error in here. Maybe I'm just like, there's a better way to do this test. I don't know. I'll be interested to see what Russell has to say about this anyway. If I get an answer from him before this video goes up, I will I'll post it on the screen.
Hey.
So one more thing. I mentioned that the old string templates like this can be used fairly handily for translations, because if, for example, things like verbs and nouns in a language that you're translating to aren't necessarily the same, like subject-verb order isn't necessarily the same as it would be in English or whatever other language you're developing your game in, you can include strings in a translation file that will simply have the curly brace 0 and curly brace 1 and whatever in the correct place in the sentence. You cannot do this with the new string templating, because as I said, this is just syntactic sugar for concatenating a bunch of strings together. And if you include a sentence like this in your game's translations file, then when you read it out of the translations file and display it to the user, you will not see the substituted values. You will just see you have this much money, curly braces money, and this many bagels, curly braces bagels. So I guess when I said earlier, I think I said this earlier anyway, that the old system was completely obsolete. That's not entirely true, but this has superseded it for a number of things. So that's it. I have no idea how I managed to talk about a feature that's this simple for this long, but hey, my name is Michael. I like wizards and dragons and making games. I normally wouldn't post code for an example that's this simple, but if you do want to run these tests for yourself in the future after a couple GameMaker updates to see if the results have changed, I will have a link to a GitHub repository containing this down in the video description. I like to make videos on the weirder things you can do in GameMaker, such as weird computer science things, weird 3D things. I'm also currently in the process of making a game, so if you're interested in anything like that, feel free to subscribe. I have a Patreon, so if you want to contribute to the channel, links to that can be found in all the usual places. Otherwise, I hope you all found this useful, and I will see you all later. Special thanks to Zenjamin, Vitro V, Squarecrow, Syndra Larson, Rowdy Coder, Manta Ray, Harold Guidry, GameMaker, Edward Holt, DJ Gibbles, and Army Armbuster for supporting these videos. If you want to support the channel, head on over to the Patreon page down in the video description to join the fun.